I'm Topher Payne.
I'm Suehyla El-Attar.
Steve Yockey.
Excellent. Well, I've sent everybody copies of your bio, so they all know who you are and what you've done. But oh no, I seem to have lost my questions. Now I'm really in big
Now
trouble.
you're gonna have to do.
I know, this is terrible. I can't figure out what I did wrong.
And there's a
Ad
camera
lib.
on you, too.
I know there's a camera on me and I can't find them. That's really, really
I
upsetting.
memorized the first question.
Did you? And
Yeah.
what was the first question, please?
What do you think are the three most important elements of a good script?
Great, that's a great question, Sue.
I'm so glad you remembered that.
I wonder what you think.
What are the three most important elements of a good
I
script?
find myself unable to answer this question.
And why is that?
Because the immediate answer I want to give you is a good story. It's the
Okay.
most important thing that you can have. And following a good story, if you're writing a good, strong story, you're going to have good, strong characters. It's a domino effect. People get confused, in my opinion, between a great concept and a great story. So once you get the story, everything else will follow. So I think it's the most important element. And making sure you know that difference.
And as luck would have it, that, Aristotle agrees with you. The top three,
Thank God,
plot,
Aristotle agrees.
character, and the ideas. I would agree with that, especially since you agree with Aristotle.
Well, I mean,
Like good
that's
We
sort
used
of
to be
my,
roommates for a while.
that's sort of my point, though, is the question is one of those, and I wonder if it's one of those things that if you think about breathing or if you think about walking, like if you actually had to stop and think about walking, you'd trip over yourself. If you started to think about breathing, then you would suffocate. And so when somebody asks that question, for me, I think I'm thinking about something that then it starts to confuse me, because then I'm like, well,
Because you don't do that when you're writing. You don't
No.
say, I believe that I will proceed.
Yeah.
You do, but you stop.
Well, I'm sure you start with the idea that you hope it's a good story.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, but I almost feel like if you didn't have a story to tell,
Then
you wouldn't write the script in the first place. So
Right,
I might
agreed.
write a story with something that I think is really important is intent. And I don't mean intent like preachiness. I mean intent like I'm telling this story because, or I want the audience to experience X. And you can't ultimately control how the audience will receive the work, but you can control how you intend for them to receive it. And so what it does is it gives your play purpose and probably drive and probably shape if you can just focus on intent. And that's something that I try really hard to, when I sit down to write something, it's because I have a question about something or because I'm excited about something and I want to kind of tackle it.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Now, that's an interesting question. Does your intent change sometimes in the course of writing it?
I think it can.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the idea, right, is that you sit down and, I mean, nobody wants to get like 20 or 30 pages into a play and be like, oh no,
Well, that was
a
a
bad
bad
idea. So I think
And that has
there's,
happened.
yeah, of course, it happens to everyone. But there are ways to like, I think if you have a sense of what you're aiming for, it's just like you can think you know how a play is going to end, and I think that that's really helpful because then when you start to write, you have a direction that you're going in, but then you give yourself the freedom in meeting the characters and discovering the play. That sounds very new agey, but I mean that's really what it feels like. As the
Doesn't always
characters
go where you.
yeah, as it comes into focus, I guess is a good way to say it technically, then maybe it goes in a different direction, but it's okay to let yourself have that freedom, but it's good to have some destination in mind when you start, I think.
Yes.
I've always, I'm sorry.
No, I think it's important to have a few signposts in place before you start the journey, but as the characters become more real to you, and as their world becomes fuller and more complete, I mean, one of the things I always hit in like second or third draft is the character that's been lying to me. And not telling, Suehyla and I worked on a show together where that happened, and in the first draft, reading of the first draft, 20 minutes in, suddenly I have this like punch in the gut where I realize that there's a character in the play who I don't get at all. And in the process of listening to it, I went, oh! I wanted to stop. I just wanted to send everybody home so I could get back to work because I realized I didn't know who this chick was at all. And it opened up the entire universe of the play. And this, what I thought was the central relationship of the show, turned out to be something else altogether.
Wow.
Okay.
Lauren Gunderson, who's another playwright that you guys may know, who's an Atlanta playwright, lives in San Francisco now, very successful. She has a play called By and By that is about cloning. And the first draft of it she wrote, the daughter
That's what it
it was called Denise Squared.
Right.
The daughter was the main character, and it's only a 2-character. I mean, there are some other little like people that played smaller roles,
Right.
but it's predominantly a daughter and a father. And 4 drafts into it, she was like, "Oh, I think the dad is the main character." And so all of a sudden, the play like became active and exciting, and there was
Wow.
like stakes, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a big,
Right,
nice."
discovery.
Right.
I can't tell you how happy I am to hear this, because I thought I was the only person that this happened to. You know, I wrote a complete, my, fantastic Appalachian version of Oedipus, and turned it into the director, and there he said, yeah, that's good, that's good. Oedipus. Why don't you write the play that you want to write instead of rewriting Oedipus? And I wrote 3 or 4 more drafts, and she kept saying the same thing. And I finally said, okay, I think I'll do what you're saying that I should do. And I wrote a completely new, an entirely new play about a mysterious stranger who came to town, and she went, yeah, that's it, we'll produce it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Here's the check.
Nice. That's what
She
you
gave
want.
you a
I
check.
love that ending.
You're supposed to-
She gave you a check when you handed her the draft.
No.
That's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, no, that's
Not nice.
Follow.
Follow his example.
It was a commission, so.
There you go. Well, now, this is interesting. Do you guys ever feel that because you have this intent, this goal that you're looking for, right? Do you ever feel that you're forcing it towards something?
Yeah, I do that. That's an
Yeah.
unfortunate thing,
And is this part of the draft thing? Is it not till you hear it aloud that you realize that that's happened? Or do you fight it every tooth and nail because that you're determined to reach this particular place?
I can only speak from my most recent experience that I fought tooth and nail to get it to the ending that had originally been proposed in the commission. Because that is what sold it for the commission.
Gotcha.
So I found myself banging everything into place to get it funneled down toward that ending.
Mhm.
And now I just want it back so I can give it the ending it wants. So, yeah,
Gotcha, okay.
yeah.
I think the first step toward writing a good play is writing a bad one.
Mhm.
And
Please expound upon that, please.
you have to give yourself permission to just finish the blessed thing. And for so many years, I just felt like I would get caught up mid-draft, and I was always trying to edit and perfect kind of mid-process instead of seeing what happens if I take this course of events to its natural conclusion. And by doing so, you can decide whether it's worth eliminating. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be, okay, 10 times out of 10. Your first instinct is wrong. It's just wrong because you're still writing your story. And until you give yourself over to kind of being the conduit for telling their story, then you're not going to be successful in the attempt.
I will say though, I think that depends on the type of playwright. I mean, on how you approach writing a play.
Yeah.
Because I'm like just to the core a structuralist. Like I consider what I do building plays, which sounds hoity-toity, but it's not. It's just a way of approaching it. And so like I will power through a first draft, but I'll be relying mostly on spine, like of the story, and those mechanics and how they work, and then I go in and flesh it out from there. So I think it depends on how you, as a writer, everyone's process is different, and so if anybody ever tells you this is how you write a play, like I was reading the question about the panel, and I was like, but only because I don't think anyone can like look at you and be like, hi, I've never met you before, but this is how you write a play.
Yeah.
So, you know, because maybe your brain works different, maybe you're Carol Churchill, or, you know, maybe you're Teresa Rebeck. They're, you know,
Right.
two very different playwrights.
Very
Maybe you're Suehyla.
Well, this might be a good place to go to a question I remembered from the list. So what is in the advice, I'm assuming that you've had classes or at least had people advise you or talk to you about writing and what you needed to do. So what is the least effective advice you've ever gotten about writing a play?
Least effective.
The least effective.
Get out
The
of
one
shape.
that you
I know
thought,
the one
that
that's
you
like-
thought was just like the most useless piece of information.
But see, the thing is
Yeah.
that if it was useless information, we already
Kinda
lost
let it go,
Yeah,
yeah.
you let
Yeah.
it go. So
I
don't-
distinctly remember the most useful.
Then
My most
what's
useful
that?
came from him, but
It
what's,
did?
yeah, but I want to hear it.
Or maybe it's the same thing that I heard,
Sweet.
but I then told someone else. Marcia Norman was our thesis advisor
Yeah.
at NYU,
Uh-huh.
and she helped me understand something that I had been experiencing my entire life with new plays, in watching them, that I didn't know how to quantify, which is that, I mean, she does an exaggerated version of it. She's like, you know, by page 8 or page 10, we need to know when we get to leave the theater. And at first I'm like, you know, that's ridiculous. But then
It
I
sounds like
came to
writing a
understand-
screenplay.
Well, no, it's not though. It makes sense, right? Because
Right.
if you are starting to watch a play about a family where the child disappears, as soon as the child disappears, which hopefully will happen relatively early in the play,
Hopefully.
you get to-
We all hope that the child
well,
disappears.
if that's what the plot's gonna be, right?
Sure.
Then you as an audience member know, as soon as I find out what happened to that child, I get to leave. And so then you can watch the theater with an expectation of
That's a great one.
how long you're going to be in the room. The feeling that I'm talking about is when you don't write from this place, you go and see a play, you sit down and you go, it's been going for 20 minutes, and you go, oh wow, this could end in 2 minutes, or this could end in 6 hours. And I have no idea how long I'm going to be here. And as an audience member, it makes you anxious and uncomfortable, and you start to lose your ability to invest in the characters. And so I think like just having that, it's just keeping the audience in mind.
Sure.
Initially, like, this is the story I'm gonna tell. It doesn't have to be that overt,
Right.
but I do think being conscious of it helps you keep an audience invested. And that was the best piece of advice I ever got.
Nice.
That's not what it was.
Okay.
It was, I think it was Marcia Norman though
It
that also
probably
told
was. She
you.
said a lot of smart things.
It's Marcia Norman. She said, write the impossible. Was that her?
Oh, no, that's Paula Vogel.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
the Paula Vogel.
She makes her students write an impossible to produce play.
Write the
Because there's
impossible.
no such thing.
Right, but that's and I kind of like that because then you have free range as long as you're writing a good story.
Mhm.
As long as you're writing a good story.
That's the advice she gives. I mean, that's really an assignment. You have to write an impossible.
It's an assignment she gave at Brown. I would assume, I don't think she's at Yale. She moved to Yale. I
Right.
would imagine that she still gave that assignment. It's a very famous assignment that she gives people because some of people's most produced plays come from that assignment. Because it's really hard. And what you realize is, like, I wrote a lot of plays for Dad's Garage when I lived here in Atlanta, for their second space because it was my home. And Kate Warner at the time was the artistic director, and she had a lot of faith in me and really sort of helped my career get started. When I went to grad school, Liz Diggs said essentially the same thing. She was like, you're in grad school because you're supposed to fail. Like, come here and fail. Don't come here and try and be perfect, because then how are we going to teach you anything? So we want you to go and not write something for a black box or not write something that's going to be produced. We want you to go write something you're passionate about that you don't care if it ever gets produced. It can have the wildest, craziest stuff. And I wrote a play in that class, my very first time out of the game, called Octopus. That is a play that gets produced all over now because it has like hundreds of gallons of water in the last 2 scenes. And I thought, no one's ever gonna do this. And then like everybody does it because they're excited about the challenge of how to
accomplish
how to
it.
realize that.
Sure.
And that's because that's how theater people approach things.
Yeah.
How do I figure this out instead of we can't? I mean, that's a great thing about theater audiences and artists. I lost the word.
I think for me, one of the things that I find rather discouraging about a lot of commercial theater that I see is that they're not trying to accomplish the impossible. They're actually trying to capture something very realistic, which is much easier on film or on television. So to me, the idea of trying to bring the fantastical on stage is far more interesting.
See, but it's not only just impossible of like in regards to bringing in tons of water and challenging the special effects or the scenic design or any of that. The impossible is also what is something that people would never think they would see on stage.
Yeah.
And I mean, Tracy Letts gives you that, without a doubt.
Okay,
There's
sure.
stuff, and that's sort of why I have a problem right now with Tracy Letts turning his scripts into movies, because they do not work as movies. Part of the reason that they are, part of the reason I find that they are so successful.
I'm guessing you're thinking Bug, maybe, and Killer Joe.
Oh, God, no,
Yeah,
just-
Bug, I didn't.
Bug.
Killer Joe is
Yeah.
such a good movie, none of you are old enough to watch it. Killer Joe is such a
watch
good
it
movie because
and
Gina
a
Gershon is
complete-
amazing.
And a completely different experience from the play.
And that, my point is though, is that Tracy gets you shoved into a room with people that you want to get out of the room. And yet you get to, and yet you care, and yet you're stuck in there and you get to watch it.
But that's a good example because he would probably call what he's doing in all of those, in August Osage County, naturalism.
Right,
Mm.
Because
but
it's
it's
not it's not theatrical in the way that most people think of theatrical. But it is theatrical because it operates in a space of storytelling that we aren't accustomed to.
Yeah, it does. And then the other person who I go to is Sarah Rule, who I love what she does with her stage directions, if you ever look at her scripts, which is, what is it from Eurydice? He builds a house from yarn, period. That's it. I have to tell you, this was my fascinating experience was I did Clean House here at Horizon Theater, and then I did a Clean House in Anchorage, Alaska. So I reprised the role and I went there, and so when I was working with the new director, there's a scene in that script where it snows in the living room. And it clearly says this, it begins snowing in the living room. The director, the second one I was working with, not a higher level director, was like, this must be a misprint. And there's a scene where there's a double scene going on where one character is in a different location of the world or in the town, and she's on the couch, and there's another scene of two characters on a balcony, and they're eating apples, and they throw them. And they're supposed to land in the living room. This is everything she has constructed. I mean, Rule has got it, and there's a reason it's doing that. And the director goes, that must be a misprint, because if you guys threw the apples, they would be in the living room. And I went, She goes, but that doesn't make any sense.
Don't
And
you come by later and clean them up? Like,
Yes.
isn't that part of the...
That's
Yes.
that's part of the act.
I mean, part of it is that it's the destruction of the house because of the marriage falling apart, all of this stuff. But
So it
when
was the
she-
snow.
I'm gonna want her name later.
And when she talked about the snow, she was going to cut it out. I went, number one, I don't think you understand the script. Number two, don't cut anything from this script without asking the publisher and the playwright
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Did you say
Find
it's scary
out.
like that?
Yeah,
Of
probably.
course she did.
I was angry. You're dealing with people that are like, we'll just cut this out.
But that's the horrible thing about writing a play, because it goes to other people and they'll do with it whatever
No, that's
they
the
want to do
great
with it.
thing about
They'll
writing
do
a play.
something really awful with it that you can't stand, that has your name on it.
Steve has watched the best thing that's ever happened to a script of mine.
Oh my God.
So
if I did,
I
it
can
helped.
see,
I'd
I
like to
can,
hear about that, but I bet it doesn't top the fact that I wrote a script about Beowulf that was produced in Ohio as a Star Trek episode. As a fucking Star Trek. Oh.
Mark, you might want to edit that out before you send this.
So, okay, well, I mean, listen, you win.
Well, I really do about it.
There we go. No, you win theater. No, it was just, there's not even, I mean, listen, that story, there's so much about it that doesn't even pertain to this, that was just insane.
yeah.
But
it
Lauren
was-
Gutterson and I went to see her play in this town called Vidalia, I should say, called Redacted for, that, like, where they cast a 40-something-year-old actress as a teenager, and they had a blind guy that was also deaf and couldn't remember his lines as the main character, had huge monologues, and
Which, yeah.
they had cut things out of the play for time, I guess, or I don't know
And
why.
they also, the worst part of it is that she was in full communication with me the whole time,
And
so,
they were so passionate about
but
it.
they were so passionate,
Wait,
they wanted to get
the
all.
best part of the story, just for you guys, that has nothing to do with the, like,
Don't
cover the
stop.
turn the camera down. No, I just want to say this. It was a surprise that Suehyla was coming. The cast didn't know, so the director made us go immediately after the show to her house. So we map quested it, whatever, we went to the house. Suehyla and Lauren and I, three playwrights, working playwrights, had to hide in the back bedroom until all of the cast arrived at the party, but the lead actress didn't come for an hour and 15 minutes. So the party was going on, and every once in a while the director would come back and be like, do you guys need anything? Actually, I say that, but she only did it twice. Actually, it's not over 10 minutes. And also there was a really creepy wooden doll that we made videos with the doll. Lauren Gunnarsson is brushing the doll's hair.
Wow, okay.
Nothing to do with theater.
Okay, well, to get us back on track, let's talk to you guys too. You guys are wonderful, but take a breather. Who are the playwrights that you would like to see produced more often, other than yourselves? Other than all present company excluded. What are the playwrights that you think are not produced nearly enough in this town, in this country, in the world in general?
UNESCO.
Okay, why? Why Eugene UNESCO?
Well, I like absurdist theater. I enjoy watching it. Nobody does it anymore. It's terrifically out of fashion. It doesn't really mean anything. So I'm not sure why I say it.
Okay. My problem with, and I love UNESCO, I do too, but the problem is that
UNESCO.
most productions that I see, it's quite obvious that they have absolutely no idea what the play is about, or they're not even trying
It's
to figure
really
out what.
funny. I think absurdist theater is really fun.
I do too. Agreed.
Beth Henley.
Well, I bet Henley.
Because
You guys know Beth Henley?
she
Yeah,
wrote
Crimes of the Heart.
That's her best known one. She
Eugene
wrote this.
Ionesco, the bold soprano with the chairs. Yes? Okay, awesome.
And she wrote Crimes of the Heart when she was 28 years old. She wrote the Miss Firecracker contest when she was 30, and has continued to have a prolific career for another 3 decades that I feel like hasn't gotten its due, and she's so much better at her job now.
Funny how that works. It's just
Yeah,
you keep doing it,
amazing.
you get
If
better
you
at it.
just keep working at your job and trying to get better, sometimes you do. And I think that the work that she's put out in the last 10, 15 years is her career best. And it's just been kind of overlooked.
Huh.
She's not hot now. She's a 60-something writer who had her moment 30 years ago. And I think it's a shame because I think she's...
All at the beginning of her career.
Yeah, all at the
Yeah.
beginning of her career, and her voice has matured so beautifully, and I just think she's a tremendous writer now, and I wish people paid attention to that.
What's her name again?
Beth Henley.
Henley. You guys know Crimes of the Heart? Yes, Crimes of the Heart, the Miss Firecracker contest. Yeah, she's lovely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Henley. How about you, Suehyla? Who would you like to? No? Okay, that's fine. Steve, anybody?
I mean, it's a different answer if you just made a land.
So today, who's the one you'd like to?
No, I
Because
don't
you
mean
asked it.
time-wise. You said produced more or produced more in Atlanta. And
Oh,
I feel
okay.
like there's an entire
We'll choose one. Which would-
world of theater that doesn't come anywhere near Atlanta.
Yeah.
Because of the theaters that are working here are operating in a certain, I was recently asked what it's like to write such avant-garde plays, and my response to that was, I don't write avant-garde plays. I don't think you know what an avant-garde play is because no one in Atlanta does them.
Right.
The closest that you get is sometimes what Out of Hand used to do, was close to that, but I think that it's, you
What about
know.
push push?
Not even you said, I love Out of Hand, but they've changed their model. I mean,
Yes,
they've
they
intentionally
have.
changed
True.
the model of what they're producing. It's not about like negativity.
Gotcha.
And some of what Push Push used to do,
Used to.
and then some of what Seven Stages used to do. But you know, you're listing a lot of people that did really amazing work that people didn't come and see.
Yeah.
So you know, there's certain merit in being like, I think these things should be produced more in Atlanta. But if the audience here isn't
If it's not here.
if the audience isn't here for it, then I mean.
Well, then this leads to another of the questions that I had on there. So what would you like to see done here? And since you're all Atlanta playwrights, at least originally, you started here at least, and you're still here, some of you, what would you like to see done here? What is it about Atlanta theater that you think is great, and what is it that you think needs to happen? This is the future of Atlanta theater sitting here. Give them a mission.
No pressure.
I'd like to see less presentational theater and theater in proscenium stages, theater that would happen in real spaces where the audience is a part of the process. I think Sleep No More is one of the greatest things that's ever happened in America so far.
Well, I mean, and did you see The Navigator?
Yeah.
Do you guys know what Sleep No More is? Yes, some of you do, some of you don't. It's an immersive production of the Scottish play. Do you know what I'm saying when I say that? Because we are in a theater, so I'm going to observe the superstition. Huh? So it's an immersive version of it in which the audience goes through rooms of a building. You really don't have to follow a particular path, and you follow particular characters as they work out the play, which isn't necessarily always the script of Shakespeare's. Make sense?
Punch Drunk Theater from Great Britain,
Yes.
that's what they do all over London.
I
Mostly under bridges, I'm not sure why.
I studied with Deborah Warner at Bada, and she does a lot of those kinds of things as well. Did you guys see The Navigator over at the Goat Farm? Anybody?
Oh, I heard about it.
Oh, man, okay. Yeah, The Navigator was also an immersive production that was based on a book called The Navigator, yes?
Yes, that is correct.
And it was in the similar kind of thing in which you followed characters through the goat farm as the play unfolded in front of you, yeah, and with you. Okay, so we want to see more of that. So take a note. All right, who's anybody else?
I think to piggyback on that, just do more theater that scares you. There's
Right on.
I think Robert Harling is a wonderfully witty writer, both with Steel Magnolias and then with his screenplays for First Wives Club, and I mean, he's a wonderfully witty writer. But what is scary about doing Soap Dish?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, but what is scary about a production of Steel Magnolias?
Yeah.
Like why?
Well, especially since everybody's produced a production of
Right.
Yeah.
And I get that, you know, because there was a theater that commissioned a work from me this past season, and the production went very well, but the production that preceded it was Steel Magnolias, and they outsold us, and that play's 30 years old, and so obviously there's still an audience for it, and then so you end up in what I presume to be the constant frustration of planning a season of, yes, you want to give the audience what they want, but if you don't challenge your audience, if you don't continue pushing them forward, the audience itself grows complacent, as do the artists. And eventually you're left with the question of why you're opening the doors, because who are you doing it for? And that's to say nothing against Steel Magnolias. Good for him. Just write another one.
When you say theater that scares you mean like Brandon Yule's scary, or like pushing the limit, or like scary?
Like Halloween scary. Somebody should start with
I would love to see
fantastic.
You know, right now I'm working on a horror screenplay, and the reason that I'm working in horror is because it's the only genre that I don't think you can produce on stage.
I think you can.
I have yet to see a play that really just scared the bejesus out of me. I would love to. As an audience member, I would love to. As a playwright, I would love to be the one that writes it. But things can scare you for a variety of reasons. And whether you're speaking to an emotional truth, whether you're speaking truth to power, whether you're voicing an unpopular opinion.
Saying ideas, saying things that scare people.
Right.
You know.
Yeah,
It might be to challenge them
yeah.
as opposed to scare them.
Like the
It might scare
status
us
quo
to do it, but I mean, that scares us as artists, but that challenges an audience.
Yeah, well said.
However, because that can mean a bunch of different
Yeah.
things.
Caitlin, you had a question?
Oh, yeah, a couple years ago off Broadway, the two magician guys, I forget their names, but they did Play Dead. Penn Teller, yes. And that's just relating to the like actual horror. I was too scared to go, but my brother went. And they like gutted people on stage and turned out the lights and like made rats like tickle at your feet and stuff. So there's an example of kind of actual scary stuff.
There's like murder mystery type of.
But there's a difference between thriller and horror.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. I mean, like even speaking of screenplays, the other day we were asking everybody like, you know, what's your favorite movie, a horror movie, and people would say things like Scream. Scream is not a horror movie. Scream is a mystery.
Right.
It's a murder mystery.
Yeah.
It's not even a slasher. It's a murder mystery. You know, and yeah.
It's a whodunit.
It's a whodunit. Which I was about to say, Wait Until Dark. Is that a horror, or is that a thriller?
That's
And is that the
I'd
same
say that
thing?
would be a thriller.
That's a thriller.
To me, horror is like.
And I've seen like
The
four
Haunting of Hill
productions of
House.
that.
Yeah.
Because people keep saying,
The
oh,
old
that
one.
play will scare you. Still wait.
Yeah. Okay, so how about either of you, what do you think that Atlanta really desperately needs theater-wise?
I think it's doing okay.
Okay.
I mean, only in so much as that I don't think that the current economic climate, as it pertains to, this is not interesting for you, but as it pertains to donors, and especially corporate donations, is conducive to taking huge risks.
Yeah.
And it's really easy for people to say, well, you take the risks and the audience come, but you also take the risks and the theater closes. So I think that, you know, what I've seen happen since I don't know, the mid-2000s, I guess, even before the financial crisis, was sort of a decline in, there are fewer and fewer people who are interested in supporting theater companies with actual donations, and there's also, I mean, there may be more people in smaller quantities of money, but the big donors have moved on to other things, some of them, and that, but a lot of the corporate donations have been pulled back hugely. I mean, you can look at the posters in Actors Express, and like the ones from the early 2000s are like produced by Bank of America, produced by Turner, produced by, you know, and that doesn't happen anymore, at least not for the mid-sized theaters. And what has happened from my very outside perspective, although I do try and go see all theater in Atlanta, not just theater at one theater, which is something else that artists in the city tend to get into, pigeonholed into a bubble of just seeing work that reinforces their idea of what theater is, which sort of then propagates more of that. And a lot of that's because they're
Defeats the
working in
purpose.
not-for-profit and they don't have time to go see everything, but
Right.
it's always good to try and step outside. The point being, since that's happened, like Topher was saying about Steel Magnolias and the point you made about everyone's produced that play, well, that's because as things get tight, you decide this is the play that's going to be the chance that I take on my season. And in order to take that chance on my season, I need to put these gems in
That's
the rest
exactly-
of the season.
that's exactly
But the
right.
effect that that has is all of the theaters, like, I'm not going to say that on camera.
Do you want me to pause?
Theaters start to,
No.
theaters start to merge in programming. And so their identities start to slip away. And as their identities slip away, then it doesn't make a difference if you're going to see something here or here or here or here, but for quality. And so then the question becomes like, how many productions of that do I really need to go and see?
Right.
And then it becomes who's going to do the best production of it. And so I think that sort of narrows the ability economically of what theaters put on stage. So I think right now there's actually a huge diversity of theater that's happening in Atlanta, more right now than maybe over the past decade. So I'm excited about that. So rather than say, I also want this, I'm going to say, let's keep going on that track and see if we can
Keep evolving. I mean,
keep growing in the current environment.
when you asked me about that, my immediate response was not, what do I want to see more of in regards to theater? What I would love to see is, it's a stupid thing, better advertising, better access to the audiences. When I started in professional theater, well, not even professional, when I started at a theater here in 2000, I remember that all of the patrons walking in were above the age of 50. And I thought, you're going to lose your audience, not because of your season, but because they're all eventually going to die.
that's
And-
all.
No, that's really
And that's,
true.
but
That's
that,
exactly
and
the
that's
truth,
everywhere.
yeah.
So as you guys are sitting here and you're getting all of this, and the other thing that I see happening is that you watch younger artists coming in and you just focus on theater and that is it, or they just focus on this and that is it. You cannot, in my opinion, I've said it before and I said it again, you cannot be good at your craft if you don't know more or experience more. And when you do that, you also meet more people. And you also expose more people to what your interests are. That pulls in more audiences. And what I want is better, I mean, the fact that everyone was like, oh my God, it's another 3D movie. Every time I see that, I'm like, theater's in 3D. I mean,
Actually,
it's-
there's a spit zone, actually.
I wanted to see all of the Atlanta theaters buy 10 billboards across Atlanta that read theater is in 3D, or you know, like something like.
And you can smell them.
That yeah, you can actually, everything is right there.
And this is, I think, a truth about marketing theater in Atlanta, and this is obviously, I used to work at Dad's Garage in that capacity, but my experience of having plays produced here as well, and going to see them, is that type of advertising isn't going to get people, what works in Atlanta is word of mouth. People have to come and see your play and like it enough to go and tell someone else to come and see, to go on Facebook and post about it, to tell other people like, no, seriously, this one you have to go see.
Right.
That's what creates I mean, less and less it even matters with the sort of pluralization of blog reviews and the fact that the paper reviews have been decreased in size and consistency. Not consistency like consistency of being published, not consistency of
Quality.
Anyway, is that reviews have less power to make or break a show, which sometimes is a good thing if you don't get a good review. Sometimes it's a bad thing if you get a great review and it doesn't have a bump in sales.
Right.
So really, it's more about word of mouth, which means it behooves us even more as writers and as artists to try and reach an audience. So. I mean, I'm not sure that if we bought all those billboards, that I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying like, I just wonder if we're in an environment where that works.
Well, there was I mean, we're totally going off the subject of playwriting,
No,
but
no.
this is the stuff that
This is the
that does
point of
affect
this
us.
whole thing.
There was a comment made to me one time that people tried to give away free tickets to a show, and no one came still, and you gotta go, why? Why? You guys are out there, you go and see movies, you're experiencing more of the modern day entertainment. That would be what I would tell you to do, is find the stories that you know are gonna pull in the audiences that are your age, because then you build that audience and they will follow you. And not only that, you'll increase and make them, you'll increase their awareness and increase their passion for theater, which should not go away.
Yeah, and then we all rise together.
And then we all, right, and it's gotta be a union kind of thing.
Let me ask you, Philip, well, I'm curious, because I'm a real recent transplant to Atlanta theater. I've not even been here quite 3 years yet. And I'm impressed with what I see, with the diversity of what I see. I'm really amazed in it, and yet I still feel that what else does it need? And you've been a part of Atlanta theater for a while. He was artistic director of this theater for a while, actually. So let's throw that question to you. What do you think is you want to see more of? You want to see less of? What is it about Atlanta theater that you think is?
Well, the first time I went to theater in Atlanta was in 1964. It was a place called the Pocket Theater on Juniper. The entire theater was the size of this room, and they did Cherry Orchard, and Night of the Iguana and stuff, And then afterwards, the audience, which sometimes outnumbered the cast, but not usually, would all come into the lobby and have coffee and talk about the play. And I was in high school and I had a date, and I thought I was the coolest person in the universe because the actors wanted to know what I thought about the play and wanted to, and that kind of intimacy is what made me interested in theater in the first place. And then see that exact kind of intimacy, and maybe it's not a world that can stand that kind of intimacy anymore. I don't know. But
why do you say that?
Well, because it's a meaner world than it was in 1964.
I don't know, the South in the 60s isn't really known for
at that time, I was primarily a Caucasian, so.
But don't you think that as a result of that, we need intimacy more than ever? Isn't that?
Well, yes, I mean, I think so. I think that would be a lovely thing to see in theaters, that people would engage more in general.
I'd like to say, after 9/11, I think what a lot of people experienced is that, and if everyone would pay attention to movies, the horror industry skyrocketed back up. And I think it's because Americans wanted controlled terror. They needed to have something that was within their control, and they could watch it, and it would begin and it would end, and that was
Yeah,
it.
but that's all you see. I mean, like television ads, and every show on television has somebody ripping somebody's intestines out. And this is the
Right. So,
comedies, you know.
but
And
it
it's
has-
just like a
For
flood of
garbage
horror
bags.
now that I think is making everyone terrified
And that intimacy.
to drive down Lucky Street.
Right, and that intimacy has become a challenge, and on top of it with the social networking and things like that. So it's not that no one wants it or that it was a kinder nation back then. I think that we are now handicapped and not able to do that intimacy.
Oh, I
And
think
literally
good
the
point.
theater would have to hold your hand and tell you how to do it.
Oh, I hadn't thought of it as like a disability. We're intimacy disabled.
Yes, we're intimacy challenged.
Intimacy
So what?
I mean, that's
what
actually a good way to think of it.
what can we do as writers? What do you see? How do you think you need to tackle that challenge? What is it that we can do to overcome this disability?
This is a nice start.
Good forward.
Talking, this is great.
Yeah. Is this so? What can they do then? I mean, this is not only future theater artists, but also future theater audiences.
Do you guys,
What
do you
do
want
they
to write
need to
plays?
do?
Huh?
Does everybody here want to write plays?
We've got
Be
a
in
couple of
plays,
playwrights, yeah.
Produce plays, direct plays?
Yeah.
I mean, I just
Design
wondered
them?
What, I don't know why this exists exactly.
Well, this is, okay, so I can explain that. These guys are from all over Atlanta, metro area, yeah. They're all seniors, yeah, right, we're all seniors. They all have a strong enough interest in theater. No, not a senior, sophomore. Maybe. Their teachers have recommended them to come here. They're not only actors, they're writers and designers and producers, some sort of potential theater artist of some kind, but also they're audience members. They're people that not only are going to be creating future theater, but hopefully supporting future theater down the road. So I think this is a great opportunity for you to talk to them and give them a challenge as to what they need to do next. If they're going to be the next generation to come and save us and keep it moving and deepening it and helping us get over our intimacy challenges, what can they do?
Well, the whole reason that I write plays in the first place is because the world doesn't make sense to me until I put it on paper.
Oh, that's interesting.
And particularly if I'm challenged by a perspective that I just can't wrap my brain around, then adopting the voice of someone who has that perspective and kind of just sampling it out until I can see the other side of it. There's just such a weird shortage of empathy now because you can always find another internet commenter that agrees with you. And and I like using playwriting as a tool of just trying to experience the diversity of perspectives and opinions that frankly just exist within my own head. It's not actually giving me the tool of reaching into someone else's brain, it's just accessing a different part of my own. And so for me, that's the reason to go into theater, is to stand in someone else's shoes, because you have a fervent desire to communicate. And you want to share the possibility of another point of view with a room full of people. And that's what makes theater different from film or television, is that you're in that room with them, which raises the stakes. Because if they reject it,
Intimacy again.
yeah, if they reject your point of view, you feel it. You know, if you have a joke that doesn't land, you want to talk about real terror? Be in a comedy that's not working. Or be the author
Yeah,
sitting in the
or write
back
one
of the
and sit in the
house.
All right, so, oh, we got questions?
Ambassador, but
No,
I would
please.
love to know which all your educational backgrounds
Why don't you go first, Steve?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah.
First. Take all
Oh, you
the
know
time
what?
you
No,
want.
you should go first. Age before, what?
What?
You know, the best response to
I'm
that
always the oldest person in the room, I don't care.
is Dorothy Parker's
I'm young at
response.
heart and I have a
When
very
someone
young
says
wife.
age before beauty, you say pearls before swine.
Yeah.
I have an undergraduate degree in folklore.
That's a major.
And a graduate degree in performance art, when there was such a thing. And I did doctoral work to be a priest, an Episcopal priest.
Yes.
All of,
Fancy.
all of which.
You win education too.
I mean, and also, you know, I've been the head of a couple of university theater programs, and I've actually learned more doing that, learned more teaching than I've ever learned as a student. Being a student stinks.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, it's much better to teach than it is to have to sit in a class or sit in a room like this and listen to four people talking.
Right, but it's good conversation.
Well, I would argue with that, because I've sat on both sides of the desk, and I like both equally, so. But I think I've learned, what was great about teaching for me was that it allowed me to clarify what I had learned as a student.
I agree, because you hear yourself saying things out loud that you didn't know you thought until you heard
You're also
yourself.
forced to concretize things. Like you're forced
Absolutely.
to these things that you just kind of do.
Mhm.
Like all of a sudden,
No, no.
someone's like, "How does that work?" And you're like, "I
Oh, wow, I was afraid
at
to
the
guess that.
desk."
Yeah. No, I understand. So, Dr. Payne.
Oh, God, I hate that, I hate it when this question. I completed the 10th grade and picked up playwriting on the streets.
Nice.
Wait, weren't that supposed to be the mean streets? or
It's
something
the mean
like
streets.
that?
Guerrilla playwriting.
Mean streets of Kosciuszko, Mississippi.
Well, there are only
Picked
two-
everything
there are
up
only
my
two
nose.
of them, but they're very mean.
Oh, absolutely. On Oprah Winfrey Road, I picked up. Meanwhile, 30 miles up the road,
In Starkville, Mississippi. I took drama 1 and drama 2 in high school, and I nearly flunked out of high school. And then I majored in math education my first semester in college, and then math my second semester in college. And then I switched to psychology with an emphasis in sexual behavior my third semester.
oh, is that what you call it?
And then I flunked out of college. And I came to Atlanta to be a radio broadcaster.
You
Yes, you have a
flunked
great
out of
voice.
sexual behavior.
She's been making up for it ever since.
Remember, this is recorded.
This will all come back to mind someday.
So, anyone have a YouTube upload link?
So we have, Steve.
I went to the University of Georgia. I majored in theater and economics because my parents were scared for me. And then I went to NYU and got my graduate degree in dramatic writing. And I teach at CalArts in the MFA Writing and Performance program.
Ooh, I also went to the Governor's Honors Program. If you have a chance to do that, man, you should do it. It's like one of the greatest educational experiences ever.
If you're seniors, you missed your
Yeah, you
chance.
did.
No, but we do have one sophomore.
Wait, we have a sophomore here.
She already did it.
You already went?
This
Great.
one's like 2 years.
Isn't it?
Yeah, they had auditions recently.
Well, if you're a sophomore and you've already done that, you can just follow his route.
No.
Look at the face.
That's amazing.
Okay, guys, can we please give them some love for taking their time to come out and talk to us today? It's so great to see you guys. Thank you so, so very much.